Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me okay. We've got a whole 10 minutes, so I'm going to do a rapid response type of run through of Kinaxis, who we are, what we're about, and things such as, what we want to do about, the case for concurrency, what does it mean, what's the impact on supply chain planning, and why does that mean it's better for sustainability, full stop. So a real quick one on who we are. So Kinaxis, we've been around for quite a good while, but we're still in that kind of major growth, hyper-growth type of environment. Lots of great stuff that's been working with us so far. Our customer base is expanding. Our partner base is expanding, which means that we're covering all of the geos, about 75 or so countries in the world now. The partner base, I think, is actually on the last quote now 90 partners, up from the 70 that you see on this slide. We are recognized as a global leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for supply chain planning. We've been best of breed for a number of other things, but you don't want to hear about that so much. You want to hear about what we actually do. So let's talk about the case for concurrency and sustainability. The supply chain, our supply chains, your supply chains, are getting ever more stressful. That's a given. The degree of disruption that is happening, the challenges that are put on us from a business environment, from a planning environment, and from a personal environment, really do see that it's becoming ever more difficult to actually run through the supply chain itself, how to manage it correctly or properly or with best interest. Orders are being lost. Inventory is being built up. We've got the ever-increasing number of global disruptions, it would seem. And a lot of that is also then putting a lot of pressure on us in our personal lives, us as people. I mean, at the end of the day, supply chains are inherently human. We still run them. And from a human perspective, people are getting used to how they work in a different way. It's not necessarily so much from home, from the office anymore. It's more from home and how that remote working works from an efficiency perspective. Dare I say it, we've probably all got to a point that in the last 2 years, we have significant Zoom fatigue. That's why it's so exciting to be back on here, even just for a short time, to actually be with people again, meeting old colleagues, meeting former colleagues, meeting people. It's just so wonderful to be back. We at Kinaxis talk about a number of things that we say, are these really the case? These are the common supply chain myths, if you will. First up, the obsession with increasing accuracy. It's great to be accurate. We all know the books that say forecasting is always going to be wrong. You make a forecast, it's always going to be wrong. Don't necessarily chase down the degree of accuracy that you think is absolutely necessary. Get to a comfortable point, but be more agile. So the ability to therefore change and switch up perhaps is better than being accurate to the first place, particularly with the disruptions we have going on. I love this one, and this is what we talk about when we talk about concurrent planning within Kinaxis and versus the cascaded model, and I'll come to that in 1 second. But there's this belief that lingers that if, for example, one optimizes every piece of the chain in splendid isolation, your whole supply chain will be optimal. I can call that one out now. That's not the case at all, because how one person optimizes their function based around the KPIs that they've been set probably means that the next person along in the chain has actually got given a real sub-optimized solution to manage now. And that's one thing we really want to touch on. Let's also talk about end-to-end visibility. Everyone loves visibility. Of course we do. We want to know what's going on. But we want to know why it's happening. So therefore, transparency is probably more important than visibility. It's the next layer, if you will. AI. All of the conversations I have heard for years now about the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and machine learning. The biggest thing with that, again, is it still comes back to humans. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is great for when we are in that steady state. The biggest challenge, of course, is when things move. And with the disruptions that we have, how do we know? Or new market entry, how do you know what historical data is going to be fit for what you want to do? And of course, improvement. Is it too hard? No, of course it's not. Take it in chunks, take it in stages. So let's talk about a new way of thinking, concurrent planning. So like I mentioned before, in the traditional cascaded approach, silo, 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 silo. What we're doing with concurrent planning is bringing everything together in the end-to-end network and really trying to collapse those silos to bring an organization-wide collaborative spirit. Trying to harmonize data in as close to real time as we possibly can and shorten the planning and decision-making cycles. That means that you can adjust much more rapidly than you could before. You can respond more rapidly. Therefore, when one person makes a change in the concurrent planning world, pardon me, the whole business will see it. In the traditional silos, you make a change, no one's aware to it until that rugby ball is passed on to you from the first guy. And then you've got something else to deal with. Now, theoretically, you may think that's great. But let's talk about what those benefits are. And these are benefits that our customers, some of who are with us here this day, what do they start to see? Just as examples, higher productivity, more collaborative spirit, therefore happier people working, necessarily lower costs, more engaged staff. These are the kind of positive results that our customers are seeing all across the board. And all of that, in our opinion, leads to a stable business. So this is why we talk about concurrency equals stability. So now I also said I'd talk about a little bit about sustainability as well. Sustainable supply chains are no longer an option. Everyone's talking about it. Today, anywhere else in the world, everybody's talking about it. They are no longer optional. We need to be doing the best that we can to keep this environment, keep this planet that we are dependent upon in the best shape. Leave only footprints, take nothing else from it. Sometimes you've heard about that sort of analogy with holidays, Take only photos, leave only footprints. That's exactly how we need to treat the world. Now, board levels, the relevance and the discussion, the voice, if you will, of supply chain sustainability is getting louder and louder at the board table. And that's great because now it's starting to make that shift from it being a broad brush corporate commitment to being operationally planned, i.e., we're actually getting into it in our planning. What I've said to many people over the years now is don't treat the supply chain as a separate work stream or ignore what planning does, particularly from a circular economy, a sustainable planning perspective. So I talked about a stable business being a more sustainable business. Well, ultimately, we're in the service of humanity, and being stable means you're going to be sustainable because you've got a much more solid business base. And the fact that you can pivot on a small angle more rapidly means you're not doing the big swings that cause upset and generally then lead to increased costs and less sustainable solutions. So I've got 30 seconds to wrap up. Call to action, if I could ask you. Consider your operational goals. How do you want your supply chain to perform? Look at the technology that is available to you. Many of us are stood out there. We'd love you to come and talk to us. We'd love to come and find out how you guys are doing things differently. Keep the decisions to what's first off within your control. Make those quick wins. Learn from others. I love that. Let's talk about adjacency. Sustainability for our planet is also learning about what other people are doing and what's best practice. It doesn't necessarily need to be in the industry that you are in. It could be in something completely separate. And I love that, and that's just the collaborative spirit of it all. And lastly, I would just say, seek that stability. I put my teeth back in. Please, a stable business, in our eyes, is a more sustainable business. I think that's my 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your time. I'm Jim Bralsford, and I've appreciated your attention.